Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this event. Kind of early in the morning here in New York, United States of America, for those who are watching us live from various corners of the world. We are still waiting for the technician to sort out a small issue. I will repeat also when the card service works. This event wants to be an event accessible to all, for all, of all ages, which means that, there I see them, there will be subtitles throughout the whole event to make sure that also people with hearing impairments can follow us. In the future, once we will have more financial means available, we will also make sure that there will be sign interpreters. In any case, for those of you who are following us and have some hearing impairment issues and can't read, at the end of this event, I hope that you all together with us will do this, which is the way in sign language you clap your hands. So, having said this, I see that the issue has been solved, and I would like to formally start the event of this morning. We're really very fortunate to have the opportunity to be here today at the United Nations in New York to discuss a critical matter such as skills and youth with focus on STEM skills, especially young women and girls in STEM that still face some prejudices and inequalities in terms of salary and also leadership positions. Youth is very dear to me, and it is very dear to the United Nations Division for Social Policy and Development in DASA, which is the division I have the honor to lead, since it houses the focal point on youth for the whole United Nations system. STEM skills can be key to find or create employment, and also be strategic to achieve peace and promote social policy change and well-being for all people of all ages. And I'm very proud to say that this event on youth in STEM is closed captioned, that is with subtitles, to be accessible also to those people who might have some hearing problems. No one has to be left behind, and technology can be a great device in this. This important event that takes place also to celebrate the World Youth Skills Day wants to engage everybody, and member states wanted to be engaged as well. So I'm very honored to have on my side the ambassador representing the permanent mission of Bulgaria, and later on I will introduce them more formally, and the ambassador representing the Republic of San Marino. We will also have in the opening a video message from the Secretary General Envoy on youth and employment, and then we will hear a short message followed by a video message and a trailer from a not-for-profit group that deals with many issues, and they will contribute to the topic of youth in STEM, followed by a panel discussion, very interactive, moderated by a very interesting person we had the pleasure of having last February from Google. And among the speakers, there will be other entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, or older ones from major companies or smaller companies, but they all have to share something about how skills, STEM skills, not only, as I said, can contribute to employ people or create employment, but how are young people going to use their skills also to achieve peace, to overcome poverty, because STEM skills can be strategic to overcome poverty, and above all, really to contribute to a positive impact in our societies for the well-being of all. I would like to thank all those who participated and sponsored, from MMC to DPI to the Committee of NGOs supporting the SDGs, and many more. But I will reserve a little bit of space at the very end for the thanking of your presence here. I welcome all of you to watch live this event online on the UN Web TV, on YouTube Live, and through Facebook. I would also like to encourage everyone in the room to share the event on their social media to further amplify the reach out of our discussion to all corners of the world. You may also follow directions on how to do so on the screen. And also, there are indications and instructions in the folders that you have in front of you. With the power of what is the social media, I think that we can start by literally just having at the finger of our tips the click that makes things happen. So, allow me to welcome again His Excellency the Ambassador Panayotov, Georgi Panayotov, who is the representative of the permanent mission of Bulgaria here at the United Nations, to give opening remarks. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Dear Daniela, thank you very much for the warm introduction. And Your Excellency, dear Damiano, distinguished guests, young people between the age of 10 and 24 represent 1/4 of the world's population, thus representing a major human resource for the prosperity of their societies and of the global community in general. Bulgaria believes that children and youth can be the key agents of positive social change and actively promotes their human rights and their meaningful participation in all spheres of the social and political life. I would like to acknowledge here the presence of Ms. Ofelia Kaneva. She is the president of the State Agency for Child Protection with the Council of Ministers of Bulgaria, who coordinates the implementation of the state policy on children's rights in Bulgaria. The realization of the human rights of children and youth and their empowerment through education and employment is crucial for achieving sustainable development and peaceful and inclusive societies as envisaged in the ambitious 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Lack of quality education and employment constitute major obstacles for young people to realize their full potential and play an active role in their societies. Young people tend to be 3 times more likely than adults to be unemployed. Globally, 1 in 6 young people is without a job and not in education or training. In the last couple of years, the global youth unemployment rate has been decreasing, which is encouraging to see, but it is still way above the pre-crisis level. More young women and men are in education, but the difficulties as regards labor market transition remain. So, how can we resolve this pressing issue? Greater recognition and investment in non-formal education could be a viable solution. Social entrepreneurship is another useful tool to address those challenges in a sustainable way by empowering young people to create job opportunities themselves. Non-formal education and social entrepreneurship are crucial also for the inclusion of young persons with disabilities in the labor market, which in the long run could contribute to reducing the rate of youth unemployment in general. Women and girls face even greater challenges only due to their gender, which fuels unemployment and perpetuates poverty. Progress has been made globally to close the gender gaps in education and labor market participation, but gender differences within education and employment persist. And when it comes to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, so-called STEM, women continue to be extremely underrepresented, despite the fact that more women graduate from university worldwide than men. The question is, what can we do to get women involved in STEM? I have a very simple answer for that: gender equality. Efforts to ensure women's and girls' participation in STEM should form part of a wider strategy for gender equality in research and innovation that provides for equal access to education, equal employment opportunities, equal pay for equal work, eliminating horizontal and vertical segregation of female scientists in education and professional development, etc. I would like to share some positive examples from Bulgaria. Women in science represent almost half of all scientists in Bulgaria, 49%, which is among the highest percentages in Europe. The proportion of female BA, MA, and PhD students in Bulgaria is steadily increasing and at present stands at 43%, which is above the average of the European Union. 53% of all doctorate degrees in Bulgaria are awarded to women. With these indicators, Bulgaria is one of the champions in Europe. Gender equality as a basic human right is crucial for sustainable development. Science, on the other hand, is a powerful driver for human rights, poverty eradication, and the protection of the planet. So science and gender equality are both vital for achieving the 2030 agenda. Bulgaria continues to strongly advocate for more substantial involvement of young women and men in the implementation of the agenda and for ensuring youth participation in decision-making at global level, including through the UN Youth Delegate Program. Since 2007, youth delegates have been included in Bulgaria's official delegations to the Third Committee of the General Assembly and to the Commission for Social Development of the Economic and Social Council, and their voices have been heard and taken into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for your opening remarks. And I would like now to thank also another one of the three co-organizers of this event, that is UNIDO, one of our sisters in the United Nations system. And I wish to thank them for having made sure that Mr. Werner Faymann, who is the UN Secretary General Envoy on Youth and Employment, could be with us through a video message. I would like now the video message to be shown. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it's truly an honor for me to address you today at the occasion of this important event. Youth in science, technology, engineering, and math for achieving peace and positive social change for all. And a word of appreciation goes to the organizers. The Division of Social Policy and Development, UNIDO, the United for All People, for choosing such a critical topic for the World Youth Skill today, as well as the permanent mission of the Republic of San Marino and the permanent representation of the Republic of Bulgaria for supporting the event and this important discussion today. I'm convinced of the importance of investing in adequate skills development for young women and men, and have therefore always advocated for better skills, for better jobs. The field of science, technology, engineering, mathematics is a crucial source of job creation, particularly for young women and men. The labor market has changed. You need to improve the skills for young people to be equipped with adequate tools, knowledge, and skills, both in developed and developing countries, to be able to respond to the increasing complexity of the labor market's demands. Evidence tells us that STEM needs to be properly addressed in order for countries to realize the opportunities to provide for inclusive and sustainable development. The traditional view of development that understands social and economic progress as anchored in the structural transformation from agriculture to manufacturing services, needs to accommodate the development of the 21st century in ECT, robotics, machinery, and artificial intelligence, and as such make room for the opportunities that STEM provides in an age and gender sensitive manner. Yet, while there is an increase in STEM graduates, worldwide STEM jobs remain unfilled. The good news is that solutions to this prevalent mismatch are in our reach, and this includes ensuring that young women and men have the appropriate skill to succeed in STEM in an equitable manner and strengthen STEM ecosystems with enabling policies and business incentives through comprehensive and holistic cross-sector collaborations. Improving skills development for STEM needs investment in training, in technological infrastructure, in digitalization, as well as increased collaboration between educational institutions at secondary and tertiary levels with the private sector for research and development and for combined studying and working experiences. This will allow us to realize the opportunities that STEM has for job creation, particularly for young women and men. Additionally, an adaptation of cultural attitudes that oftentimes stigmatize STEM as an unattractive field of study and work, especially for women, is crucial to promote STEM as a source jobs for youth and thus as an enabler for inclusive and sustainable development. Skills development for STEM needs to be inclusive and accessible for all. This includes supporting women and minorities in STEM and developing technological infrastructure for indigenous communities. In fact, while young women and girls might be encouraged to enroll in STEM-related studies, the labor market might not provide equivalent incentives to seek employment and STEM-related jobs. As it has been discussed in our panel today, there are already a number of integrated and functional partnerships, both with the private sector and civil society organizations and young entrepreneurs themselves that are achieving evident positive impact, but more needs to be done. It is remarkable, in fact, what young entrepreneurs working in STEM are achieving in terms of innovation, but also in terms of peer-to-peer support by supporting and employing these peers. But most importantly, in responding to today's local and global challenge in a sustainable and inclusive manner. Social entrepreneurs, a growing movement, particularly among young women and men, are committed to creating positive social impact. And this has an impact on all the SDGs. While we notice that social entrepreneurship is not fully recognized enough by the international community and international policymakers, and therefore doesn't receive sufficient support, we are aware of the contribution young social entrepreneurs are providing to the world. Studies have shown that social entrepreneurs are more resilient and they tend to create more sustainable employment opportunities in the long term. Young social entrepreneurs in STEM are not exception, and by improving social and economic participation, enterprises and social enterprises led by young women and men contribute to social and economic justice and thereby contribute to increased resilience of communities and to strengthen peace and prosperity for all. I commend the efforts of the United Nations and its partners for their admirable work in supporting young women and men in STEM, in strengthening the skills of young job seekers and collaborating with industries and the private sector for increased equal opportunities, and finally, in recognizing and supporting social entrepreneurs in their quest to achieve the SDGs. These efforts are critical for the improvement of decent job opportunities for youth in an inclusive and gender-balanced manner, in light of new technological developments and innovative trends. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best.
We thank very much the Secretary General Envoy on Youth and Employment, Mr. Warner Weimann, who served also as the Federal Chancellor of the Republic of Austria. And thanks again to UNIDO. And then I would like to have the third of the three co-organizers share with us their thoughts. And this will be United for All Peoples. Please, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, United for All Peoples app is very proud to be with the SPD, DESA, and UNIDO, one of the three organizers of this important event. App thanks also co-sponsors, Permanent Mission of Bulgaria and Permanent Mission of San Marino, and the participating NGOs and the supporters. My name is Dominika Jacques, and I have the honor to introduce the video of the Director of Art and Design of App and the video trailer. Thank you.
I see that the technician is trying to prepare the next video to be watched. I suppose is going to be watched through YouTube. Can I have a sign from the technician whether it's going to work? Yes, thank you.
Il existe une offre croissante dans les emplois liés à la STEM et les possibilités de carrière pour les jeunes dans toutes les industries. Alors, pourquoi existe-t-il un tel écart entre les sexes dans l'industrie STEM? Chers tous, United for All People, UP tel que nous l'appelons, est heureux de célébrer la Journée mondiale des compétences des jeunes avec vous tous, avec un accent particulier sur les jeunes femmes et les filles. UP est heureux d'organiser avec la Division des politiques sociales et du développement des Nations Unies, au département des affaires économiques et sociales, l'événement sur les jeunes dans les milieux STEM, mettant en évidence le rôle que des jeunes dotés de compétences STEM peuvent jouer pour parvenir à une paix durable et un changement social positif pour tous. Nous souhaitons également exprimer notre reconnaissance pour la participation des missions permanentes, des ONG comme DPI et MMC, le secteur privé et les universités, mais surtout les jeunes. La perspective de UP, United for All People, est d'avoir des sociétés inclusives pour le bien-être, la prospérité et le bonheur pour tous les peuples. Nous croyons que vivre dans la prospérité est une aspiration universelle et l'emploi de la jeunesse est une des clés. L'emploi des jeunes est une question cruciale pour l'éradication de la pauvreté dans le monde entier et nécessite des efforts collectifs menés par les décideurs et soutenus par le secteur privé, la société civile et le milieu universitaire. Quel choix ferez-vous lorsque vous partez d'ici aujourd'hui? Le secteur privé utilisera-t-il les compétences STEM des jeunes pour offrir des possibilités d'emploi? Est-ce que vous, les jeunes, irez valoriser vos compétences STEM pour trouver des façons novatrices et transformatrices afin de promouvoir un changement social positif? Ou irez-vous retourner à la routine habituelle? Concernant UP, vous connaissez notre réponse.
We thank very much United for All Peoples and Ms. Buyatti for this video message. And now we are going to move to a second part of this event, which is going to be very interactive. We have many panelists that are going to be introduced, and the panel is going to be moderated by Hibab Kamal Grayson, who is a person I had the pleasure to meet last February. She also intervened during one of our events during the Commission for Social Development. In her capacity as a senior public policy analyst of Google, she came here today, but now you are going to be the moderator. Please make it lively. Those who are watching it us from other parts of the world, please interact, tweet, ask questions, and these questions will be then shared with the panelists and also with the honorable ambassadors and me, if you wish. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody here in this room and to everybody watching online. And thank you to Ms. Daniela Bass and her team for their dedication to exploring how we can all work together to ensure that technology fosters a more peaceful and prosperous world. Thank you also to UNIDO, United for All Peoples, the Permanent Mission of the Republic of San Marino, the Permanent Mission of the Republic of Bulgaria, and the UN for making sure that this issue doesn't get lost, in the dialogue, and making sure that we keep talking about this, because there is a lot of work that still needs to be done. Got it. So as Ms. Boss noted, I work at Google. So it's not surprising to a lot of you that I do honestly believe in the power of technology to change our life and to change our world for the better. But still, we at Google are very aware that there's no magic solution for all of these issues, and that all of us in this room, students, young people like you, everyone who's watching right now, governments, other companies, nonprofits, educational institutions, we are all going to have to come together to ensure that everyone in the world has the skills and opportunities needed to use technology to improve their lives and to create the sort of resilient communities that some of our speakers have discussed. So I'm really excited to be here today. The amount of talent and experience on this panel is a little intimidating. It's incredible. And what I want to do today is to really think about what concrete steps all of us on this panel and all of you in this room can take to address this issue. Because despite all of our amazing technological advances, it's true that, as other speakers have said, 1 billion people still live in poverty. And that includes a lot of young people and a lot of potential that is, to be very frank, being wasted right now because people don't have access to the skills and to the technologies that they need. So that's a truly staggering number. And what I want to do today is to think about how we can all come together and inspire and encourage young people to develop and to use STEM skills to make our world more prosperous and more peaceful. So I've talked enough. Without further ado, I want to introduce our incredible panelists. I'll be honest, when I was reading all of the bios, I was so overwhelmed by all of the accomplishments on this panel that, to keep it a little interactive, I would actually love it if our panelists could introduce themselves. We can start with you, Melissa, and maybe a couple of things that you find most important, because your bio is incredible. So.
Excellent. So my name is Melissa Sack. From several different capacities. So I work in Microsoft's Affordable Access Initiative team. I am not sure if anyone has had a chance to see our news this week. We're very, very excited about it. We've recently made a commitment as Microsoft to connect more people in rural America to the internet. And naturally, it's not just about Microsoft. As you mentioned, it's a multi-stakeholder approach, and we all need to work together to solve not just skill building, but also access to the internet, access to physical devices, access to the skills that young people, that all of us in the room need to really transform our lives through technology. So I come to you from the Microsoft perspective. I also come to you from academia. So I'm also a woman working on my PhD. And my focus is on really exploring a number of different things, meaning digital inclusion specifically in North Africa, which is where my family lives. I spend a significant amount of time traveling in North Africa and the Middle East, where in my spare time beyond my Microsoft world, I run a nonprofit called Mentor Nations. It's 100% youth-led, and the majority of all of the people involved in our work are not just sharing their skills forward, but also learning how to become tomorrow's leaders. Dia, my country manager in Tunisia, comes from a place in Tunisia where there's upward of 57% unemployment. 57%. And these are engineers, someone who followed the rules, someone who went to engineering school, learned the skills that he or she was supposed to learn in school, and still hasn't found a job. And so we're working in country to really identify ways to improve youth unemployment, not just in Tunisia, but in Bangladesh and Pakistan and other countries from around the world. I also looked at all the bios, amazing, and I know I've talked enough about myself.
Yeah, if we could just go down and keep it brief, just who you are and a couple of your accomplishments that you think are most important. So next we have Zach Sims, who's the co-founder and CEO of Code Academy. Incredible. Zach, a couple things that you think everyone should know about you.
Sure. All right, my name is Zach Sims. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Code Academy. Thank you. Code Academy teaches about 25 million people around the world technology skills and helps them find jobs. We do that all online, interactively, and in a way that doesn't take up a lot of bandwidth. So we work with a bunch of national governments around the world, including the UK, Brazil, Argentina, a couple others, in order to promote access to STEM skills for youth. And then we work with a large percentage of our learners around the world to help them stay active in the job market and acquire technology skills to gain employment.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Next, we have Tracy Chu, who is the co-founder of Project Include, an organization that I really admire. Thank you, Tracy.
My name is Tracy. I'm a software engineer. Thank you. I'm Tracy. I'm a software engineer by training and by profession. I have degrees in electrical engineering, computer science, so this issue of STEM education is one that's obviously very close to me. I have previously worked at companies such as Google, Facebook, Quora, most recently at Pinterest. My work with Project Include, which I co-founded last year, is focused on diversity and inclusion in the tech industry with a focus on startups. So in recent years, we've seen a lot more attention on this subject and more of a drive towards making some change. And the founding impetus for Project Include was to help guide some of that change and write down some of the best practices, create handbook of recommendations and resources, and really help to drive greater inclusivity, comprehensive solutions, and accountability through metrics for change in the tech sector.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tracy. Next, we have Kelly Lavelle. She is a youth mobilizer and CEO of Lavelle Corporation and My Effect, Inc. She's incredibly accomplished. A couple things that you think people should know.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Lavelle. As a youth mobilizer, my work focuses on bridging the gap between youth, private sector, and public. That takes two forms. One, helping mentor youth themselves and spotlight the talents through peer-empowered messages. Most recently, we finished a project called The Power of Youth that features 200 youth in 59 countries, ages 6 to 29, who are changing the world. Secondly to that, I'm CEO of My Effect, Inc., which is a big data company that looks to use self-adaptive computing and blockchain to track skills that youth earn through volunteering to help them differentiate and improve their employment by showing things beyond just their education. And so Girls in STEM is a popular topic that I'm very passionate about because I am one. Thank you.
That's fantastic and truly incredible. Thank you, Kelly. Next, we have Miss Marina von Schlegel. She is the Executive Director of Embassy 2.0. A couple things you think folks should know?
Excellent. First of all, thank you all for having me. Sengitamu. This is good morning in my family's language from the Tewa Pueblos of northern New Mexico. I work in technology policy advisement and capacity building, mostly in emerging markets. But I was also the first Latina in the United States to own and operate a technology incubator. I built my first startup out of my dorm room at age 19 in PHP as a self-taught programmer, and experienced a lot of the challenges in the ecosystem of not having that support that we do need to collectively build, not only here in the US, but in every emerging market and for women everywhere. I also currently have a project called Indigenous Labs. We are working to create a virtualized skill-based workforce ecosystem for Indigenous youth that will also be scalable for markets with remote workforces and include a lot of these individuals who are not currently being included. So approaching the qualitative aspects in addition to policy and content. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And finally, we have Miss Carol Kennedy, who is who works at Manhattan Multicultural Consulting, and she's a consultant there. And she'll serve as our discussant today and has prepared a statement. So if you would like to go forth with that, that would be great.
In everything that everybody has to say here, I think it's fascinating. I'm primarily interested in youth with disabilities, and so I'm going to be really interested to hear what everybody has to say about addressing those particular issues, especially for women and girls. And I've worked as an academic. I'm a professor, as a consultant, and as a researcher. So and also working with autistic children. So I'm going to be very interested to hear what everybody has to say in regard to that particular population. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. So just to kick things off, and I'm going to be very strict about time, just to warn you. So I just wanted to quickly give everyone in this room and online a sense of, we know you've accomplished a lot, and you're all deeply, deeply invested in this issue. But what inspired you to follow the path that you've been on? Basically, why are you doing what you're doing, and how did you get there? Melissa?
How much time?
Let's keep it. Oh, sorry. Yeah, let's keep it short, as short as you can.
Okay, perfect. So mine actually comes from a deeply personal story of mine. My children are victims of parental kidnapping. And for me, I was able to become a mother from afar through digital inclusion. And I realized that the internet was my pathway to become a mother in a different kind of way. It's not something I talk about often. It's not something I talk about publicly. And it's something that's become my life work, not just because it allows me to be a mother from afar. Don't worry, they're safe, they're healthy, they're happy, they're fine, I see them. But it's allowed me to take this really deeply personal tragedy and turn it into my superpower, whether that's at Microsoft connecting people to the internet so that they can realize their own superpowers, or to working on my PhD and realizing, how do we actually define digital inclusion? What does that actually mean? And how can we all come together as a community and define what does it mean to be a digitally inclusive society?
Wow, wonderful. Thank you so much. Zach?
The original inspiration behind starting Code Academy came from seeing this massive skills gap around the world between the innovation that's being created in the technology sector and massive unemployment amongst youth around the world, and kind of a general frustration with the fact that nobody was trying to solve that problem, from government to nonprofits. And so we decided building an easy, accessible way for anyone to participate in the digital economy and hopefully not just find jobs, but create other solutions to tackle problems like youth unemployment was the way to solve the problem.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And I do feel like that gap between the amazing innovation that's going on around the world and, poverty and unemployment is one theme that has brought a lot of people together for this event. And I am really grateful that we're getting to talk about it. Tracy?
I am someone who has been very fortunate to grow up in Silicon Valley, and I was the child of two software engineers who built their own software company, and being in the Valley was always something that was kind of easy to do, to go into technology, to study math and science. But even with all the advantages that I had in the Bay Area and going to schools there, I felt a lot of headwinds as a woman in engineering. And when I was first in my studies and entering the industry, I didn't quite know what that was. I could feel that I was not necessarily as included as my male peers, but I didn't know what was the source of that. And as I engaged more with other women in the field, I started to see what the systemic problems were. And it was very eye-opening to me to see, even with all the advantages I had, how difficult it was to succeed in the tech sector. And it makes me think there must be so many other people who are so talented and would be so great in this industry, and they're being kept out. And so we talk a lot about inclusion, but the flip side of that is that there are factors that are actively excluding people, and we need to dismantle those. And also, being a software engineer and being on the inside of a number of startups that have built products, I've seen how the lack of diversity and inclusion in the workforces that are building these products has very real ramifications for the products that get built. So examples of things that are pretty obvious oversights. Say when Apple launched HealthKit with iOS 8, where you can track all these things about your health and body, they left out period tracking, which is a very obvious use of quantified self and something that half the world population cares about. And I don't know for sure if there were no women on the team that was developing that, but it seems like a very obvious oversight. If there had been better gender diversity on that team, that they wouldn't have missed such an obvious use case. And so there's a bit of the personal angle of being a woman in engineering and also just seeing what the ramifications are for the world, the lack of diversity and inclusion that drives me to do the work I do.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And I think especially some of our opening messages did a really good job of hammering home that point that technology isn't going to be a force for social good unless it is inclusive of not just gender and race, but of people of different abilities, sexuality, everything. So I really do appreciate that. And just a reminder for folks watching online, please do send questions. I know we have a lot to unpack here, but Kelly, yeah, a couple of things about yourself that you think folks should know.
Yes, my motivation and inspiration, I guess, comes in twofold. One, my entry into STEM or technology, not your typical girl in STEM, I guess you could say, is I see that STEM is sometimes, we see it as a career path, but for me, I saw it as a means of innovation to solve a problem. I saw my work comes rooted in youth empowerment and leadership development, and I saw twofold. There's two types of kind of groups of youth. Your overachiever, actively involved in a lot of things, and then you have this other subgroup who is not yet involved, but is maybe looking and wants to, but just doesn't know how. And so you had this gap. And I saw in both elements, youth could gain skills through volunteering and extracurriculars, but there wasn't a way to tangibly track that and use it as a way to improve their employment or get them into school and things like that. And for those who were struggling, that volunteer skill building was essential for them to help build up perhaps struggling grades and other circumstances. So I saw technology as a way to start to capture that and bridge that gap. And then once I became a founder of a technology company, I realized quite quickly the gender gap, as I was the only female in the room a lot of the times, and the pressures to even being that female in the room to conform, to kind of dull my look, to go more stereotypical. And I found that if I was experiencing that many girls who have not yet explored the pathway might too. So a lot of my work now focuses on empowering girls in STEM and also shifting the narrative a little bit to see STEM as more of a 21st century skill that all youth should have rather than necessarily just a career path that if I want to be a developer, that's the only reason I get STEM skills. So that's a little of my background.
That's incredibly impactful, and it's very true. Ms. Von Schlegel, what inspired you to do what you do?
Well, as research has shown, entrepreneurs come from families and communities of entrepreneurs, and I am no different. My grandfather was one of the head senior research scientists for U.S. Naval Research and Development and one of the first researchers on machine-assisted learning and how that leads to large-scale capacity building. My uncle also invented a microprocessor for robotics that has led to the robots at Disney and also later stage robotics advancements at a company called Emulex. I am very fortunate to have grown up with this, coming from a family of my background. There's not a lot of individuals in these spaces with people like me. And my current work and my work for the past decade has worked in the inclusion space and also as a role model and mentor and serving on boards for organizations such as the U.S. Hispanic Heritage Foundation, the Latino Startup Alliance, and representing that 0.5% of Latinos who do receive venture investment, who have received roles in corporate Fortune 100s in the executive roles. I mean, within the 6% of women in this space. Statistically, I don't exist. And it's very important for me to continue that work, to make sure that there are more opportunities for people like me, that we are bringing this as a foundational base for these emerging markets so that people aren't left out. We do know that this lost opportunity in the U.S. represents a $2.5 trillion economic opportunity that is lost in our community, and 12 million jobs right now that we need to capture for global growth, as well as a 12% GDP loss overall for countries that are not pursuing radical inclusion right now. Moreover, it is critical that we are keeping pace with our communities who may be under-resourced to also learn these skills. There's an easier way to level that playing field, to move toward gender digital parity, goals 9, goals 5, goals 17, and to make sure that we do not result in permanent second-class citizenship. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. I think one thing that is very, very clear from all of your statements is that all of us care about this issue for different reasons, and we're coming at it from different angles. And I do think that too often this issue of STEM becomes a very flat sort of, you study this to get a job. It's kind of what you were talking about, Kelly. So what advice would all of you have for youth who are kind of interested in STEM, may not really see a place for them in it beyond just, major in the sciences or mathematics? Because I feel like that's the advice you hear too often, and I think it sometimes makes people feel like they don't actually have a space in this field, whereas all of us came in from very different angles for very different reasons. So in short, my question is, what advice would you give folks who are kind of interested in STEM beyond just major in math or whatever?
So from my perspective, I feel like we often have a problem in computer science where it's this mystical thing. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not technical. Mm-hmm. I'm not a techie. What does that actually mean? And I probably have used that term before myself, but I think that we all, those of us in STEM, those of us who are engineers, those of us who are programmers, have a role in demystifying computer science and not making STEM sound so complicated and scary. Mm-hmm. One of the tactics that my team employs, whether I'm wearing my Microsoft hat or my personal Melissa hat, is leveraging Hour of Code, for example, and really going out with young people, as young as 4 years old, or even as old as 104, to do Hour of Code. Spend an hour going through and talking about what is computer science. Okay, maybe Hour of Code is the introductory building blocks of learning to code, and maybe you're not going to come out of spending an hour learning computational thinking and start building an app. But I think it's about starting those building blocks of really demystifying computer science and not making it so scary.
I couldn't agree more. And Zach, I know you've done a lot of work to do exactly that. And if there are any messages that have worked really, or strategies that have worked especially well for you?
For sure. So at this point, Code Academy has taught, as you suggested, more than 25 million people around the world. I think one of the critical things in breaking the stereotypes that we've all been talking about is in that understanding that this is a foundational skill of the 21st century, right? The same way people learn language skills, programming and computer science and STEM skills are part of critical thinking in the 21st century. And so understanding, I think as Kelly had suggested, that this isn't just about becoming a software engineer, but instead it's about being an active and engaged 21st century citizen, I think is very, very important. Beyond that, as Melissa suggested, just getting started is really one of the biggest things. Something that we've done a lot at Code Academy is try to work on the language, the presentation, and the accessibility of basic computer science skills, and making sure that kind of what I would say is the classic system of education, which tries to intimidate people away from difficult subjects like computer science, is kind of taken away in favor of a solution that is super accessible and starts by coaching and assisting people through the process instead of intimidating them with its difficulty. So my biggest advice to students that might be considering getting started would be just that, which is get started and dip your toes in and try to find a way of doing so that isn't intimidating and works to help you build up your skills with others.
Thank you so much. That's fantastic. And I think this is a natural segue to you, Tracy, because I feel like your organization really does focus on different ways to frame STEM and to steer away from that traditional, Silicon Valley, this is what an engineer looks like sort of thing. So have there been sort of ways of approaching this issue or advice that you would give young people who may be sort of considering going down this path?
So echoing some of the themes that other speakers have already mentioned, I think drawing that connection between the means and the ends, like what it is to be coding and what that enables, is very important. So one thing about code and things in the digital realm is that it's not always clear what all those building blocks are. So you see a website, you don't necessarily see all the work that went into it, which is different than in the physical world. You can see buildings get built up, you can see bridges get constructed, and you understand the link between doing engineering work and what the outputs are. It's not as clear with software because it is in that digital realm. And so helping people to understand the connection between writing these lines of code and what is possible with that technology is really powerful. There's some research that says, this is a little bit of a generalization, but girls are often more motivated by the sort of impact they can have. So a lot of girls will be interested in doing things like medicine or teaching because they know that there's this tangible effect on improving the world and working with people. And sometimes it's not that clear that software can have that same sort of impact. So it just feels like, oh, you're writing code, you're at a computer, and it's not clear that that has a sort of impact that they want to have, even though in truth, software gives so much scale and leverage to actually achieving impact. So drawing that connection, I think, is important. And then the other part of it around stereotypes and dispelling those misplaced notions of the types of people that can do coding is very important. I think there's a big role of media in this. And so I think movies like The Social Network, which perpetuate this example of the hacker in a hoodie working late at night, are not so helpful. But movies like Hidden Figures are very powerful because they start to showcase different types of people that can be very successful and impactful in this world.
Thank you so much. So, Kelly, I know that you've done a lot of work in empowering people, especially young people. What would you say to young people who are considering STEM careers beyond just, go to school and study science?
Introductory to tech was I was at a youth leadership summit and we were doing an icebreaker. We had to learn about each other, and my colleague or my partner was a keen developer, and he said he was a developer and he knew 9 languages. I'm like, oh, what, French, Italian? And he's like, no, development, Python, HTML, code. And so very much to that point, it is a basic skill. And what I would say is 2 things. One, in the next decade, it's estimated that over 65% of the jobs youth will hold aren't even created yet. We don't know what the future is going to hold, but we do know that technology in STEM is going to be a fabric of that. And with that in mind, there's in the next 5 years, over 2 million jobs are going to be made in STEM fields. So there's a great opportunity for young people who, right now, in the face of very high unemployment, can start to chart a path. With that being said, you don't need to necessarily pursue just a STEM path to benefit from those skills. If you're in marketing, knowing how to use HTML and CSS will save you tons of time in doing a marketing website. There are other applications and other careers where basically it's getting into the fabric of most jobs. And so what I would challenge you today is view STEM almost like the 21st century cursive. You don't need to learn calligraphy and go all in, but at least learn how to write a signature and maybe write a few notes, because that's going to serve you and that's going to come up in your career regardless of what field you enter.
I love that. I'm going to remember that and keep it here. It's fantastic. Ms. von Schlegel?
So I'm a big advocate of espousing all of the digital economy skill sets and going to where kids are, especially in establishing policy frameworks and infrastructure frameworks for youth skills. So looking at places that youth like to explore and looking at sort of Instagram, Twitter, other social media marketing as a skill set, looking at media skill sets. These are gateway skill sets that lead to more advanced things like coding. These are skill sets that automatically have an endpoint when you're using someone else's technology for what you can do with that technology. And at some point, when someone has refined skills and advanced level skills in these more entry level places, they're going to look at developing unique and personal solutions. They're going to look at solving their own problems and problems within their communities that aren't being solved by existing solutions. So I think it's really important to go where youth are and whatever people like to explore, to continue that and to get as good at that as they can, and then to pursue programs like Codecademy and digital online learning and look for these groups of support that can bring these educational capacities.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. So I know that I want to be mindful of time, and I want to leave time for questions, both from folks in this room and online, and also give our discussant some time to wrap things up as well. So I have a last question for all of you, a lightning round. I keep it super, super short. One of the things that I feel like we often forget about, especially in these conversations, is also the importance of soft skills. So if you had to pick one sort of quote unquote soft skill that doesn't have to do with formal education or coding that you think is critical for success in the labor market and especially in STEM fields, what would it be? So one skill, as short as you can.
So I think that word soft skills is this esoteric thing where I think if you ask 10 people what's a soft skill, you're going to get 10 different answers. So I'm probably going to give you a different answer, but
Well, I can define. Well, let's consider it as something you don't learn in school,
Yeah.
and something that doesn't have to do with STEM specifically.
Got it. So for me, I don't know if this is a skill or not, but I'd say passion. I think if you've got the right passion, anything is possible. The impossible is possible.
I'd say empathy is one of the more important skills, understanding the people you work with, but in fields like technology where so few people can have an impact on so many, being able to empathize and understand with the people that you're building for.
I would say communication, and in particular written communication, because I think being able to write clearly means that you understand things to this extra degree and you're thinking about communicating to someone else, and so there is that empathy built in as well, and it helps you to explain what work you are doing and what the impact is on others.
I'm going to say communication too, but oral, public speaking communication. You can have the best idea or innovation in the world, and you may have created something fantastic, but if you can't articulate that value to others, even your value of yourself in a job interview, it's going to be a real challenge. So I think public speaking and communication to articulate your ideas is really important.
I'm going to say negotiations. It's very important that we learn to advocate for ourselves in a strategic way. And we know that people who ask for more get more. Also, with women in STEM leaving, 45% of women in STEM leave within the first 5 years of their career. And this is a really critical number. And we know that this is to do with lack of potentials for advancement, work-life balance. We need to know that we need to advocate for ourselves as passionately and strategically as possible from the start, so that we don't run into as many of these challenges later on. So thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. And Carol, I would like to invite you to also answer this question and to give us any thoughts and remarks you might have.
First of all, soft skills, I think, are very important for everything. I am really interested to hear what all the panelists say. I keep hearing the word inclusion, but does that word inclusion mean including women and girls, or does that mean including everybody regardless of ability? And I really would like to have some input from the panel about what you personally have done or your organizations have done to reach out to young people with disabilities. And then I have a short PowerPoint, because I'm very much a research to practice person, to show things that I've worked with, because I go into the, okay, so I won't show the PowerPoint, but I just want to talk about getting to younger children and girls in the schools before we get to the level where they're out getting employment. But first, I'd like to hear from everybody about what your organizations are involved with as far as outreach.
Great, thank you. And we are running short on time, so
I will.
make sure that you have time as well.
Yeah, because I'd like to discuss some other
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, we also have Q&A from the audience, so
Okay.
just want to make sure we can fit all of that in. Go ahead.
So from a Mentor Nations perspective, my nonprofit, I would say it's been a bit test and learn in terms of digital literacy with youth with special needs or accessibility challenges. Last summer, one of my volunteers and I visited a Syrian refugee camp. And we went in with this idea of teaching, doing Hour of Code. And we got there and we realized it just wasn't the right solution based on the skill sets and the mobility challenges of the youth. And luckily, I think we were able to adjust on the fly. And I think, if you've got 10 different people sitting there, similar to the soft skill question, and you ask, what's the right way to be diverse, to be inclusive, whether you're talking about women, girls, individuals with accessibility needs, I think you have 10 different answers. I've been very proud at Microsoft of the work that we do when it comes to diverse hiring and bringing in individuals with autism and various other types of accessibility needs. I'm also very excited to start working on initiatives to determine, are there opportunities for Microsoft to look at diverse hiring, meaning individuals who might be confined to their homes, and identifying opportunities to bring more connectivity into rural communities and enable work from home solutions for individuals who might have mental instability or what have you, but might be appropriate for work from home solutions. So lots of different, I think, ideas, and I think there's still a test and learn quite concept where we've got great ideas, but still room to grow.
Great. I'm not sure if we have time for every panelist to answer this question, so maybe if you want to give, I just want to make sure we have time to hear from you as well. Yeah.
I've been involved in working with young people with disabilities for a long time and have devised digital text with multi-means of accessing information, whether it's on the computer or whether it's in actual text. I think it's really important that we have some understanding and some educational background of young people with disabilities. So when you do outreach, that you make sure that you understand what their limitations are, but not just their limitations, but what they can bring to the table. And that we go from an asset model rather than a deficit model, because I think they have a lot to offer. I know the population that I work with, we've done a lot of social story videos where they create their own videos about their own issues, and it helps them, and this could also help with acculturation. We've done a lot of things as far as teaching them computer skills and getting them to be able to go into the workplace that will be a welcoming place for young people with disabilities. So they don't feel that I'm the odd person out, but they have a lot to bring. So I think that's something that we really need to keep in mind for everybody. And I also think we need to think outside the box as far as careers. I know my colleague is teaching young people with autism DJing skills, which are an engineering skill for young women and girls. There's coding, there's the Lego Foundation, which brings a lot of things into the classroom, and particularly targeting girls and women. And here's another place where young people with disabilities are very well able to function and enjoy that. So that's just something that I wanted to put out there, that let's think in terms of asset, that they have a lot to offer. So I'm going to take up
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And actually, that is a really good segue to some of the questions we've been getting from the internet. Thank you all so much. We are about at 5,000 views from around the world, which is kind of incredible. Wish I'd brushed my hair this morning. And I know. We are live through UN Web TV, and I know that we've been getting a lot of shares and tweets and likes, so I really do appreciate that. And one of the questions we got from one of our online viewers, I would love to pose to this panel, which is, and it has to do with your remarks, Carol, and it's, how can we make sure that the STEM industry provides programs and opportunities for marginalized and disadvantaged youth? For example, migrants, youth with disabilities, folks in remote areas, people who aren't able to obtain education, folks who may identify as LGBTQ, etc. So in short, how can we have more structured programs and opportunities for folks who might not be easy to reach through formal channels?
Well, I would say programs like Code Academy and things like that really make things accessible. I would challenge youth that even if you aren't able to go to school to learn some of these skills, one of the advantages of digitalization in our interconnected world is there's so many things online, free YouTube tutorials, programs like Zach's initiatives and things where you can pick up those skills and self-learn if you have the initiative. And with that in mind, again, emphasizing the amount of jobs that are getting created in that field. One thing about digital is there's an ability to have less barriers, I think, for when we talk about things like inclusion and things, because you might have someone who's not as mobile, but they can work at home and do coding and other things. It opens up opportunities to move beyond sometimes initial barriers. But it does take the initiative sometimes to learn it on your own.
And I think it's great for us to stand up here and talk about getting online and learning to code, but half of the world's population does not have access to the internet. And if you don't have access to the internet, you probably don't have a device, which means you're probably not going to go out and learn how to code. Maybe you haven't seen a computer before. Hell, maybe you don't even have access to energy. So there are, I think, a lot of wicked problems that we need to think about in addition to empowering underserved communities through technology. Microsoft's Affordable Access Initiative team, the team that I'm a part of, is working on solving this multi-stakeholder approach. It's not just us. And investing in programs that will connect the next billion, the next 4 billion. It's not going to be solved overnight. It's not going to be solved this year. But I think there are a few components, and that's how do we get people connected to the internet? How do we get people connected to power? How do we rethink ways of doing that through innovative technologies such as TV white spaces? How do our teams here sitting, from government work with our regulators in the ICT sector to encourage new regulations around spectrum, to open up spectrum, to enable social entrepreneurs in places like Malawi, in Zambia, in many of our own countries, to figure out how can we rethink connectivity. In my mind, that's the first step. Without access, what are you going to do with your skills, and how are you going to transform those lives through technology?
I want to add something from the industry perspective, which is that a lot of times these tech firms have a very narrow idea of what they're looking for. And so instead of actually focusing on the skills that they want to hire employees for, they're focused on credentials that don't necessarily match up with those skills. So I've been a part of hiring and been in the recruiting process at a number of sort of prominent Silicon Valley companies. And there's a big focus on people who have 4-year university computer science degrees from top-tier institutions, when those may or may not actually match up with the job skills that are needed. And so I think there's starting to be some shift there where companies are being more deliberate about what they're actually looking for in hiring, and also building programs to help onboard people from different backgrounds. So one of my former employers, Pinterest, has been running an apprenticeship program. So kind of going back to an older school model of helping people to transition in with some skills that they have, but helping them to learn skills on the job. A lot of times with these tech firms, they're looking for people who already have the exact skills needed and are ready to start contributing within a couple of days or a couple of weeks and months. With the apprenticeship program that we had at Pinterest, we had a 1-year on-ramp, so people who are coming from boot camps or non-traditional backgrounds could still become productive in that environment.
Just like to add one thing about the connectivity around the world. Sometimes, most people have access to at least a cell phone, or somebody in the community may have access to a cell phone. or a smartphone. So we need to train leaders within that community, the educators, whatever. If one person has that, then we have a way to reach other people. And I think it's really important that we train the trainers and look at that as a technology does not have to be up in the sky. We can start with the most basic thing and see how can we maximize that to use it the most to reach the most people.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I also want to give people in this room a chance to ask a question. All right, we have a couple. Wow. Daniela, what do you think we should do?
A gentleman and woman, a gentleman and woman.
Perfect. Start with you. Yeah.
I'm Queen Mother Dr. Deloise Blakely. I'm the community mayor of Harlem and the ambassador of Goodwill to Africa. I ran fast because the young people of New Future Foundation asked me to come. And in coming this morning, the concern that they have, how do they forge technology, the technical skills that they may know as master students or undergraduate students that would be able to go for development in developing countries. How do they do that? How do they implement those skills so they are very effective in terms of education? I thank you.
Yeah, let's take a couple questions and then we can.
Hi. Yes, I'm Vincenzo Pascal. I'm an educated journalist. I have a couple of questions. How corporate, I mean, this is basically for everybody, how corporate America consider a sort of education done online? I learned a lot, but I have a PhD and a master and so on, so it helped me. But I consider a kid or 18, 19 who doesn't have a formal education but learns through the platform you created. How is it considered when it applies for a job in corporate America? A quick second question for Zach. Congratulations for your extremely powerful fundraising. I try to raise money, but it's extremely hard. Probably you can give me some tips how you get millions from donors. No, I'm happy when they give me $1,000. No, congratulations, everybody.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we're taking two more. There's a young lady in the yellow. Yes.
Hello. Can you hear me? Hello, good morning. I'm Anjali from the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts. So, as you may, I'm really impressed by the work of all the young people in this room, and it's truly commendable. I myself has a background in information technology and as a master's in technology management, and have been working with tech for quite some time as well. But eventually I shifted to development work and working with policymaking for young people. That's actually one of the trends that I've been seeing for quite some time now with the Filipino young women, because there are a lot of us in the university who are taking STEM careers, but eventually when we go to the industry, retention has been declining. And I just want to know how the governments or actually the organizations are making sure that young women actually does not only get skills, but also stay in the industry and influence and become role models of other young women to take into STEM careers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And one last question. There's a gentleman, yes, you sitting in the back with the glasses, if you want to.
Can you sit on the,
Hello. So you guys mentioned passion and empathy as keywords to motivating women to get into STEM. However, there's also a lot of pervasive social attitudes like mansplaining, sexual harassment, sexism, exclusion, etc. So you guys have been providing a lot of solutions to push women up. I was wondering, are there practical solutions to pull men down so that they can be more empathetic and
I love it.
pull them down from their egos?
Oh, So I want to give panelists an opportunity to answer any of these questions. We have questions about technology and sustainable development, and of course, unforgettable question about how to level the playing field a little bit. Because it is true that often women are told to be more aggressive or this and that, and perhaps the focus should be less on modeling that behavior and, redefining standards maybe.
All right, so I know there were a lot of questions, and I'll take the last one maybe, because I've kind of forgotten what all the other ones were. So maybe you could help me there. But I think we shouldn't put men in a box and women in a box, girls in a box or boys in a box. I think for me, I'm a woman in STEM. I feel like I have opportunities, but I know women who feel like they don't. And I think it's up to us, each of us, even women in STEM, to recognize if we are in a meeting and we identify that someone's being talked over or someone is not maybe feeling as comfortable to speak up, for those of us who might feel more comfortable to stand up and make that happen. Again, I'm more of an outgoing person, so I find it easy to say what I need to say, but I recognize that there are others who do not.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'll take the question on applying skills in corporate America. I think one of the biggest issues with alternative forms of education that I think many of us around this table are trying to pursue in one form or another is a reluctance from the employer side to accept alternate credentials. And obviously Tracy talked about this as well, in understanding that a four-year computer science degree isn't the only way. I think one of the things that is proving to start to change that is oftentimes role models that come from backgrounds that are non-traditional. So I think the media has a role to play there in promoting non-traditional role models to help people understand that jobs are accessible to all. And then I think, as Tracy suggested, that Pinterest has done, apprenticeship models are becoming more in vogue in the US, and I think that should continue to happen. Countries like Germany with much more advanced apprenticeship models have a lot to teach the US when it comes to understanding alternate forms of education and how to get companies to accept those.
Thank you so much. And unfortunately, we've hit our the end of our time here together, but I do hope we'll keep the conversation going. Please keep chatting online, and please do stay in touch. And thank you all again for being here today.
Thank you. So I would thank again all those who have participated, sponsored, supported, co-organized, those who are present, all those of you who have been engaging with us online. All your answers will be answered later on, maybe in writing. And I would like now, since there is another meeting, as just said, taking place, to slowly but surely leave the room. Thank you very much.